I did complete, full, strict keto for a while, and then I changed it up. Here's why. Although you might have heard that there's such thing as essential amino acids, which come from protein, and essential fatty acids, which come from dietary fats, and that essential carbohydrates do not exist, they still serve an important role. And in this video, I'll share some of the problems associated with low to zero carbohydrate intake. The very first one is dehydration. That's because we store carbohydrates in the form of glycogen, and 3 grams of water are stored alongside each 1 gram of glycogen. So when we go low carb and our glycogen stores are depleted, we also excrete a lot more water, and dehydration is already an incredibly common issue. So you can see how this would exacerbate an already common issue. Up next is the problem of lethargy. Carbohydrates are the body's preferred fuel source. It's what your muscles use for high intensity anaerobic efforts. It's what your brain runs on even when deep in ketosis. 20 to 40% of the brain's energy still comes from glucose, aka sugar. And when people transition to keto, they often feel extremely lethargic. And while that can partially be improved by consuming enough electrolytes, specifically salt, a small amount of carbohydrates can also help. Then you have the loss of lean mass, because it's true that the body can actually manufacture its own glucose through a process called gluconeogenesis. And while that is an option, you don't necessarily want to do that, because when the body does that, it uses a hormone called cortisol. It breaks down lean tissue to get at certain amino acids like glutamine or alanine. It then sends that to the liver, and then the nitrogen gets stripped away and used for energy. So the side effect of that is elevated levels of stress hormones, which is overall tissue destructive. Then you have the hunger hormones, leptin and ghrelin, responsible for both your appetite and satiety. Long-term carb restriction can lead to leptin dysregulation. It can also reduce metabolic rate as thyroid is downregulated. The thyroid prefers carbohydrates as a fuel source, and that's why you'll often see issues with thyroid show up on the blood labs of folks that have been adhering to low carb for extended periods of time. There's the relatively minor issue. A lot of folks also suffer from constipation due to lack of fiber in their diet. Fiber is a carbohydrate, and those following keto or carnivore get very little. And while the long-term effects of low to zero fiber are not well known, we do know that the transit time of food through the GI system is very indicative of overall health. Whether it's causative or not is yet to be determined. Your body also uses bile to break down the fatty foods that are unavoidable in keto and low carb in general. And one of the little discussed problems with this is that high levels of bile acids actually interfere with proper protein absorption. Then you have one other issue, and that is what you're going to be burning instead of carbs. If you break down fats due to the Randall cycle, you experience a temporary decrease in insulin sensitivity. If you break down amino acids, that's also possible, but then your body creates a lot of ammonia as a waste product. And ammonia is highly toxic. And that's one of the reasons that excess protein consumption is often correlated with disease and shorter lifespan. So what do you do about this? The simple thing is, even if you're following a low carb diet, to periodically add carbohydrates back in. It doesn't need to be an insane amount, but it should be relative to your lifestyle and overall level of physical activity. Not only will you see your hormones, for example, your testosterone to cortisol ratio improve, your thyroid markers improve, but you'll also recover faster from workouts, you'll stay more insulin sensitive, you won't lose lean mass, and overall your health will improve regardless of your goals. So carbs aren't necessarily evil, and although they're not an essential nutrient, they can still be an important one to make sure you're getting enough of.